we'll take a little peek at that. So we'll just kind of chip away at each of these topics. And, I would love to have some good interaction. We've got a nice little cozy group tonight. So if people have questions and they want to ask, I think we have time to do that. Shanika, don't you think? I think we have time to interact. So if for some reason we feel like we need to move on to the next topic, then I'll just suggest that maybe we save some questions for the end. So what I'd like to do is introduce our various panelists. And if you guys could just tell us a little bit about who you work for, maybe a little bit about your career path, and anything else that you want to share. So we're going to start with Yolanda Hawks. And Yolanda is Recruitment Marketing and Outreach Leader at Coke. And that's the KOCH. We talked about that because most people think it's Coca-Cola. So you may know brands like Georgia Pacific or Invista. Those are under the Coke umbrella. So Yolanda, could you please introduce yourself to the group?
Yes, thank you, Kathy, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Kathy mentioned, I currently am working at Coke Industries, and so Georgia Pacific is one of our companies in the family of brands. And so I've been in recruiting, although my title says recruitment marketing. That's one aspect of recruiting that is important to making sure you guys hear about the opportunities, but also so that you are hearing the right messaging and content. Also, outreach as a part of my role is related to diversity and looking for diverse pipelines of talent for us to tap into. So being able to connect with BDPA is definitely of interest to me, and being able to find talent in various areas and job categories, backgrounds, disciplines are important to me as well. And so past experience, I have worked at the Coca-Cola company, but also worked at Siemens and Westrock, but Rockton when I was there, always in recruiting. So always looking to find ways to connect with talented individuals. Really have just enjoyed doing this work for the last so many years, just because it's really helpful to get people a start in life if they're early in career. And for those of us that are a little more experienced, help put food on your table and help you find fulfilling opportunities. So good to be here.
Great. Thank you, Yolanda. Jason Hayes, who is in talent acquisition at Ream Manufacturing. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Not really a tongue twister, but a brain teaser is I actually, when I graduated high school and I went into college, I went in for computer animation. So people say, well, you went into computer animation and now you're in HR. How did that happen? And I didn't want to be a struggling artist. Simple answer. So currently working at Ream in talent acquisitions, helping to build and drive a pipeline for those candidates and or applicants who are not actually paid attention to. I like to put the peg in the square hole, if you will, right? Just they're like, wow, how did that happen? Have people think outside the box. And then also I am the VP of Finance for NAAA HR, National African Americans and Human Resources. But you can remove that African part because now they're really broadening their search to be more inclusive, diversity and inclusion growing within our industry.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like the square peg in a round hole. Really kind of get to know more about the person, because we kind of call it behind the resume a little bit, like what makes them tick and what's not always obvious on the resume. So
exactly.
That. And then we have Tila Jackson, and Tila is the VP of HR Search for Talent Connections. And Tila, tell us about you.
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for making the time to show up today. I lead the HR search practice with Talent Connections and am a partner in the business and have been here for over 15 years. I absolutely love the work that I do and the people that I am able to touch through this work. especially right now when it's such a gift to be able to put people back to work when they've been out for so long. So I am incredibly grateful to have any moment of time with individuals that are looking to better themselves, as clearly you all are here tonight. My background is in corporate and agency recruiting. I've previously recruited for Georgia Pacific and for Turner Broadcasting. It was GP before Coke, of course. Turner Broadcasting, and then I started my career with Cigna on the insurance side of the business. I moved to Atlanta about 20 years ago, and have enjoyed every minute of being here and am a student of the profession. So I always love to learn about people, about what's happening in the community, and certainly to stretch myself a little bit. Although I am not talking to tech candidates every day, I am talking to tech CEOs every day. And so I think that could lend itself to helping you better understand what those organizations are looking for.
Great. Thank you. I'm kind of laughing a little bit about the Georgia Pacific thread here. My husband worked for Georgia. I'm like, did anybody else work for Georgia Pacific? Yeah.
Right.
Almost.
I know.
Almost. There was that time, but
There was that time. It is a big company. It is a big company, and it's based in Atlanta. So, well, I didn't actually. So I'm head of marketing for Matrix Resources, and for those of you who are like, "Who's Matrix Resources?" Let me tell you, we are. We are an IT staffing and agile consulting firm. We've been around for 37 years, and we're headquartered here in Atlanta. And JV started when he was in, I think, elementary school, and he's been here 25 years.
Yeah, 27, something like that. I wrote my skateboarding.
so you're 30 years old. We got the math.
Yeah. It's just like that picture. But you know what? Matrix is a company. I do have to tell you this. I've been in the Atlanta market for 30 years, mostly in marketing, in the last 8 or 9 in this industry. And I've known Matrix as a brand since I started in Atlanta. So that's really, I had the opportunity to come work with Matrix just 2 years ago. I was really excited about it. It's just such a solid, values-based, do the right thing company, which I don't think you can always say that. I've worked with other companies, and I'm just really proud to be part of the organization. So over the course of our history, we have placed 40,000 plus professionals, almost all IT in either permanent or contract to hire. JV really has probably placed, I don't know, 1,000 people in the Atlanta market. I mean, he really is very, well connected. So it's really a cool organization, and I'm just happy that we could facilitate and kind of just talk about these reasons why you might be looking for a job and give you some advice. So let's dig into it. So what I thought I would do is really just kind of go through the topics as I mentioned, and the panelists, we all talked about it ahead of time. What are some of the thoughts and opinions that we have about that if you're looking into take into consideration. So I want to start with the very first thing: new year, new career. The top reason why people are saying that they might be wanting to look for a job is because they want something new. So I'd still, I'd like maybe Yolanda, you could kind of start us off of, if you're looking for something new, some of the things that people might want to keep in mind to help them with that path.
No, thank you so much. When you think about something new, a lot of times we're motivated. Like we said, we just want change. And when I think about that, a lot of times you're wondering, where do I start? Because maybe you're not sure if you want to stay in the same lane as far as the type of work you've been doing, and maybe you just want to change a company. And I know some of the others will get into more of that. Or if it's something with your actual role or the position that you're in, you may need to look at upskilling or reskilling even. And for many of us, we've had a lot more downtime at the house, being still over the last 9 months. So it's been a great time to go after a certification that might help you get that next opportunity. It's also been a good time for networking as well. So what you're doing here tonight is a great way for you all to learn, others that are in the organization, as well as connecting with those of us on the panel. But, truly it's a good time to go after some of that, but you might want to think about different opportunities that are of interest to you. Look at those job descriptions and see what the companies that are of interest or the jobs that are of interest to you are asking for, and really do some self-assessment to understand where you may have some opportunities or some gaps. I think that's a big key piece for us, because there's some employers that are moving away from having certain skills because they are willing to train you. But again, understanding that this is a tight job market. So the more that you can bring forward, the better your opportunity may be in order to secure that new role. So I would say that's one of the key things. So you may hear people talk about upskilling, reskilling, cross-skilling. So even if you stay in your company, there are ways that you can grow and learn even while you're there at a company if you want change, but don't necessarily have to leave the company. There are things you can do to talk with your supervisor, or you might want to also look into having a conversation with HR, or if you have some type of training group, you can learn through that as well.
Great, great. Jason, did you have some thoughts you wanted to share too?
So one of the things that I like to always share with people is a great quote by Harry Houdini, one of the greatest illusionists in the world, who said, what the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes. So, it goes back to what Yolanda was saying about prepping yourself and doing a self-evaluation on who you are and what are you presenting to the world. So what I would always say do is, if you, let's say, for instance, you want to, go to law school, then you need to start dressing for success and, look at what lawyers are wearing, right? And then next thing you know, they're going to be like, hey, are you a lawyer? And then that's when you've made that mind shift. So that's what I like to do. Whenever I went after a job, I always studied for it, reread the job description, ask my recruiter for advice, anything that can help me, give me somewhat of a slight edge. And as we stated before the call started, be observant of the surroundings, right? Look at, if they're into baseball, if they're into fishing or golf or whatever, start to make it relatable. Just have a conversation. And then next thing you know, it becomes natural, and you might be that next candidate sitting in their office.
Okay. All right. Tila, do you have any thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I would definitely echo, Jason and Yolanda's sentiments in terms of looking for something different. It really, it's about imagining yourself in the role, what that might look like. And the hardest part right now, frankly, is getting past the job board or the website or the career site and getting through that funnel to actually have an opportunity to talk to someone. And, what I've always used as a mantra for individuals that ask me for career advice or how do they get through that website, it's really about making connections inside of the organization, not only making those connections though, but really having valuable discussions with them, not just sort of reaching out on LinkedIn and just sort of pinging people, but make people aware, as much as you can, of course, outside of your company, if it's confidential, make people aware that X company is my target company. If you know anybody there, a neighbor, a friend, call that person, reach out to them, and please make an intro. If you're having a barbecue, I can't tell you how many people have found opportunities by going to like a barbecue at someone's house, and then the next thing they know, they're working with them at the company. So, if you see someone, take advantage of that opportunity on too much. We need that opportunity to go to the barbecue, have a good time, and also paying the audience to say, like, where do you work? What do you do? Not that you want to do that at every barbecue, but it is nice if you find someone that works at that organization and they can help you get a leg up or a leg in. And, the one thing about COVID is it's so hard in this virtual space because you sort of feel like, you are in some random rocket, Elon Musk, and you're by yourself in Africa in 7 seconds, but you can't get there because you can't get past that website. So if anything, I would just focus on how can you penetrate that? How can you find previous coworkers that may work at that organization that may be able to refer you in or make a call on your behalf? That's really the most challenging. It's not necessarily figuring out what you want, it's figuring out how to get in to have the conversations with the companies you would like to work for.
Right, right. Well, one other thing that I wanted to comment too about something new is looking at some of the upward trending new roles that are coming about, and JV and I've talked about this before with, for example, with the being so big, or people moving from being project managers to like product owners or scrum masters, and where do you have a certain core skills that you can use to transition into some of the more up and coming upward trending roles. Had JV, you've seen some shifts in regard, right?
Yeah, I think this whole segment of the session right now, just on change for change sake, it's do you want to change? Do you want to change from the company where you are, or do you want to change in what your actual role is and what you're doing?
Right.
So my main point, and I think Yolanda was touching on this in the very beginning too, is oftentimes where you are, there are opportunities. It's really hard to go from company ABC and you're doing a specific role, and then you want to go from ABC to XYZ in a different role. XYZ isn't going to be interested in you if you don't have the skills that they're looking for. So to take advantage of when you're at ABC, most companies have some opportunity for you, whether it's with the people that you work with, on free education, tuition reimbursement, something.
Right.
There's avenues to work on your upskilling and reskilling, like Yolanda said. So I always encourage people, I'm like, hey, even if you should always be trying to learn, because you just never know when that's going to be valuable, but I guarantee it's always going to be valuable. So, so that definitely, to segue in with what you were talking about with some of the specifics, I guess in the IT world too, that we're seeing such a big change going from the world of project to more alignment with product and agility. And so all those, I don't want to offend, some of the legacy titles are business analysts and project managers. And now we're seeing more scrum masters and product owners, and those are the titles. So to be looking for, those types of roles is really, really key right now. Otherwise you might be left behind. So. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, let's move on to another of those choices. And I want to talk about culture. And we had a kind of a funny conversation about company culture. I mean, sometimes it's just not a fit, right? I mean, it's like they're like this and you're like that, and you want to be a fit, but if you're just in a position where the culture is not in alignment with what works for you, I'd love to hear. I think Jason was very passionate about this. Thoughts on what do you need to think about in your current role if you're currently employed, and if you're not employed or just looking for a new role? How do you ensure that there's a good culture fit? It's really key.
So for me, I've consulted at Bank of America, at SunTrust, and before I even started with Ream, I was a consultant before they signed me into full time. And so I've always had a very adaptive personality, which nobody ever sees coming. And I think that's what you got to be sometimes. You have to have a very adaptive personality. You have to understand that what happened at my last company is not the same here at this company, right? And so when you are interviewing, pay attention to what's around, see what the break rooms look like. It's very important, because sometimes you go in some places, maybe like Google or Amazon or something, they have snacks in the break room. I remember when I first interview for Ream, they had snacks in the break room. And I was like, ooh, like I got very excited about that. I was like, yeah, snacks. I have my fat boy fetishes. And then there are other companies. For instance, when I was at SunTrust, SunTrust was just, it was that financial. It was, kind of, we come here, we do this, you go home, and that's how it was. And I was very adaptive, but I knew that wasn't going to be my all be all, right? So, sometimes it's good to take a consulting role or a part-time or attempt to hire role, box a little bit, and you're just going in to see what the culture's like. I am a ex-military guy. And the first thing I did was I went reserves. A lot of people will go in full active duty and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go full active duty. Well, you might like full active duty. So at least if I went in reserves, at least I only have a commitment of 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out the year. So don't be scared to just kind of put your toe in the pool a little bit, if you will, to check the temperature. And then if it's not working out, it's not working out. And you can just say, hey, you know what? I've came in, I've seen what it's like here. I don't think it's going to work with me. And then go explore other things.
Okay. Tila?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share a little bit about, culture fit. Culture is big. If you work for an organization, you want to enjoy the culture that you're in. I happen to be from a fairly entrepreneurial family and a very highly educated family, and I tend to thrive in those environments. I've always said that, culture is a part of the fabric of who you are. And it's what you bring from way back, from childhood, from what you're used to seeing, from the family that you have. If you're super family oriented, you are going to be, you will thrive more in a family oriented environment. I think, in all of this, it's about being introspective and understanding yourself and understanding what works for you. And more importantly, what doesn't work for you. Big corporate is not for you. And, you're more someone who wants an entrepreneurial venture or to work with an organization that's in this new stage where everything's exciting and it's not this legacy product that is on the market and probably doesn't have a lot of profit margin and not a lot to get excited about. You just have to know what is right for you. And, that's part of why we're here at the meeting tonight, is to hopefully, I always say this: if you could create an index card or a notepad, write 5 things about culture that you feel you would enjoy. And if you go interview with a company and they meet 3 out of 5, you're good. If they don't meet 1 out of 5, it's a no-go. It's non-negotiable, because long-term, you're not going to be successful. You won't thrive, and you may not enjoy the environment. But just as much as you're assessing the culture, you want to also assess the leader and make sure that leader fits those bullets as well from a culture perspective. So it's a double lens that you're looking through. One is through the hiring manager and the team that you'll be on, because oftentimes, especially in larger organizations, certain teams have certain cultures and other teams have different cultures and different norms in terms of how they work and how they approach work. So looking at it from a holistic perspective, and again, making sure that you write down those 5 things when you begin your job search that says, these 5 things are things that I'm used to, that I enjoy, and where I feel I would thrive. And that environment has to meet 3 out of the 5, or it's a no-go. And you just have to stick firm to that, because the moment that you turn away from it, you will look 4 or 5 months into the role and go, this is not a good place for me. And I don't want any of you to be in that position.
Right. Cool. Yolanda, you have some thoughts as well?
I think the only thing I would add is that it's okay, as Tila said, if you don't find that fit for a particular culture. And I think having the opportunities that are available now, where you can do more gig work, contract assignments, a lot of companies are opting for that right now, because they're not necessarily bringing on a lot of full-time talent. So if you can get that opportunity, as Jason mentioned, where you can either take on a contract opportunity, maybe it's consulting, if you're able to do that. But if you're able to understand what it's like, try before you buy is something that I like to do, and something that I encourage, honestly, because I think it's really a good opportunity for both sides.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that we found from our client perspective, it's also good for them, try before you buy too, in some ways. Not in all. I mean, and sometimes it's just a surge in needs that they have, and they really need people from a contract standpoint. But the contract to hire is obviously I think it's a great way to, is a good path. I was thinking, Tila, off topic, I was like, ooh, the 3 of the 5 for my friends looking for a husband. Maybe I'll have them come up with like the top 5. And then when they're dating, we're going to run through it. And then maybe that'll be like the litmus test. If they make the 3 of the 5.
That works.
I know. I like that. I'm going to use it for other strategies.
If you're looking for 5 out of 5, you can hang it up.
That is true.
It's 80-20.
I say just let the algorithm do its thing. That's it.
Oh no, Jason. It's not going well. Oh boy. We gotta move on.
This is not a data in, data out exercise. No.
Yes, this is yes, it's not the days. Okay, sorry, I went down that path. That might be another use. Okay, let's talk about money. Because I know a lot of people, oftentimes people are looking to make a change. And I know that from experience with my experience over the years, just with my professional friends and my own career, is that oftentimes if you stay at a company a long time, it's hard to get those incremental, meaningful bumps if you're kind of staying in a similar role. So going out and looking in the marketplace, I think is smart. It either validates that you're getting compensated well. Usually I think that most people, it's not just about money, but it's certainly a contributing factor. So I wanted to start off by showing you, and we'll do a little screen share here before the call. The panelists, we talked about maybe some roles that the audience might be interested in seeing in terms of what is the range of compensation from 25th percentile to 90th percentile in the Atlanta market for a specific job title. And then kind of look at the national numbers too, the national range. And we partner with a company called PayScale, who aggregates all of this data. So when you're looking at compensation, you can certainly look at a range and assume that most people in the lower end of experience levels would probably be on the lower end of the compensation. But you have to look at other factors which play into being able just to get a job in this role. It's not just about compensation, which is key, but what also drives it is supply and demand. I mean, it's, basic econ. One of my daughters is taking in her freshman year in college. I'm like, when the supply is low and the demand's high, you're probably going to be able to demand, more money. But in the past year, for sure, what has also impacted all of this is the bump in the percentage increase I know that we've seen in companies that have given us job openings to help fill, where they're like, can be 100% remote. So from 2019 to 2020, we saw 256% increase in the job openings that we received from our clients that said 100% remote. I mean, I don't know, maybe they'll fly into headquarters every once in a while, and the more higher in demand, the more likely, that remote can be a possibility. I would say. That may not be a good, JV might argue with me a little bit on that, but I do think in some of the higher demand roles, people are definitely looking at letting people work remotely. So let me just share this with you, and then I'll turn it over to the panel to also kind of talk about compensation. You guys are more in that in terms of negotiating and working with candidates. So I will share my screen. And can you guys see this? Okay, great. We were talking about business analysts because that is a very popular role. So this shows you in the Atlanta market what the range, like I said, 25th, 50th, 75th, and 90th percentile. And this data, just to understand, we put in here as just a person with this title. It wasn't a specific size company. It wasn't, well, in this case, it was a geography, which was the Atlanta and like a 30-mile radius. And you can get a feel for the national range as well, which I actually was a little bit surprised that Atlanta was this much lower, but this is what came out in our data. But what's interesting is if you look at the supply and demand in the Atlanta market, there certainly is some leverage for business analysts because the demand is so high. So I always feel I feel personally good, and you guys should too as IT professionals, that while the market is tough, certainly being in the IT segment is one of the best places to be. I mean, I'm kind of stating the obvious, but, and then you can see what the national supply and demand is here for business analysts. As we were commenting, product owners has become it's sort of an upward trending role. Some people are moving from project management into product owners. So that's always the path. You can get a feel for the range here as well. And then you can see there's a good, I think since this is a job seeker panel, these are like good odds when you see that the supply is low and the demand's high. Well, you're going to see that on all of these actually. Take a look at Java developers. Good range. And also we have some imbalance over here. And if anybody wants to comment on any of these, iOS developer, data scientist, which I know has grown in popularity. I thought that this supply and demand was striking. If I could do math really fast, I could probably say what that difference is between the two. Yeah. Cloud architect. Cloud obviously is one of the biggest investment areas for 2021. And then we'll end on the old Agile coach, which is something that JV had brought up. All right, panelists, who wants to give some commentary around if you're looking for a new job because you're looking for more money? What's your thoughts?
Ooh, negotiations. I am the worst. I know, right? You would think that, even being in HR, right, that you should know better. But I am the worst. But I'm good. I will negotiate for you, but I can't negotiate for me. It's horrible. So going past that, what I've seen is when people come with the data, when they come with the statistics, the market research, I actually had to stop in my tracks and take that back to the leadership and to the hiring managers and say, hey, here's what's going on in the market. And it actually forced the company to then reevaluate what they're doing. And we were able to hire candidates within market rate. So the data you shared is actually great. I think people should notate that and take that down. Because when you can come with the data, numbers do not lie.
Okay. Yolanda or Tila?
I think that for me, being on the corporate side, I'm sure Tila has some good tips for the job seeker being on the agency side. But, I look at it where, as you mentioned, Kathy, about some of the other non-financials as well as other types of compensation that candidates should consider. Because I think you have to look at all of that. Like when Jason mentioned snacks in the break room, I'm like, that may seem small, or free lunch or something like that, but all of that adds up to that total comp. What do the benefits look like for a particular organization? Are they paying all of your medical, dental, all of your health care? Those are the types of things that you also need to think about in addition to some of the other areas from just your base pay, any variable compensation that might be available that you can then impact your pay as well. So I think it's really looking at that and understanding that and not being afraid to ask when it comes to that negotiation negotiation part, asking what is involved in a compensation package.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have often said that, the job search is not a game, but it is a competition. And when thinking about salary and compensation and negotiating that for yourself, and the age old tough question of what are you targeting in terms of pay?
Yeah.
And I'm a real straight shooter, and I love it when people are straight with me. And so if you're ready for the job search and you've curated your top 5 from a culture perspective and what your target companies are, right along with that, is practicing that conversation, because every recruiter is going to ask you that question in some form. And to just be ready and either approach it from the standpoint of I'm here now and I'd be looking for this, or approach it from the standpoint of my target compensation to make a move from the current role that I'm in. I will say, because I'm on the search side of the business,
Right.
it's not really agency in a sense that we are just doling out jobs to anyone. Most of our searches are very targeted, and we have to create and curate a target list, and we go after people. And we are 9 times out of 9 pulling them out of the current opportunity that they're in. So in those conversations, it's really important, even though I'm blindsiding them with a phone call every single time, because they're not looking usually, and I have to have that conversation with them. I prefer if they say, here's where I am now, here's what I would need to leave or make a move, or to just say, here's what I would be targeting for my next role. And then you can say, is that within reason for this opportunity? And I don't know, it's so funny, and I talk to really, senior level individuals in the search work that we do. But even everybody has trouble with this conversation. And I always jokingly say, I'm not trying to calculate, what kind of house you can buy or what kind of car you need to have. We really need to know, because our client has a budget and we have a budget that we're working within. So I think it's as forthcoming as you can be. And I don't care, if you're 50 and in order to leave your company, you've been with them a long time, you've invested quite a bit, they're close to home, or you work from home 2 or 3 days a week, share all of those things that are important to you. By the same token, what Yolanda mentioned in terms of what's not on the page, I call it, or what are benefit offerings, part of the total rewards package, which includes your base salary as well as any incentives that are offered. I am actually working with a company right now. They offer a $2,000 professional development bonus each year, and the money's just out there, and you can use it for whatever you need. So you can go get a certification, you can go get credentials in anything you'd like to do with that $2,000. Now, you can't go on a cruise and learn the next whatever. It has to be approved, right?
Sure.
But it is part of the total rewards package. And as Yolanda mentioned, also looking at, do they pay full benefits? Do you need benefits? Is your spouse or partner carrying those benefits? If they are, then maybe getting front loaded is more important to you from a base compensation perspective, and you really aren't looking at the benefits. And I think just as open as you can be with that helps that recruiter negotiate for you, or helps you negotiate with that hiring manager or that executive that you might be talking to.
Right. I've always had a question as a job seeker. Do you give a range for the people who are looking for a job and they say, what are you looking to make?
It is important to give a range. Yeah.
Okay.
Ideally. Now, the basement of that range is important. And not going too far on a ceiling. And I've always said that the ideal range is somewhere, a number that's within 15 or 20% from the basement. You're going up 20%, let's say, from the basement to your top end. But that basement number, I jokingly say, it is like a verse in the Bible. Like, once you put that basement number out there, it is in black and white, it is solid, and that person is going to know that that's where you just to start from a salary.
Mhm.
Hopefully they come in a little bit higher than that, and hopefully you can
Yeah.
negotiate towards that. But
Sure.
it is important to really sit and think about, what is not only like, what do I need? What do I want to
Mhm.
buy? Or what bills do I have to pay? Because oftentimes people think from that perspective, but think about, what would it take for me to uproot from what I'm comfortable and thriving in to then,
Yeah.
because that's the case when I'm calling someone. They're comfortable and they are thriving. They, as a matter of fact, they just got the best performance review they've ever gotten in the history of the time that they've been with that
Mhm.
company. That's when
Mhm.
I come in with the call. And so I have to hit that person in a space where hopefully they're, open and forthright with what they might be looking for,
Okay.
even though they weren't expecting to have the conversation with me.
Okay.
And this might be a little bit of an old school drawback, but don't be scared to say, hey, what's the range that this position pays? I think that's a fair question to ask.
Okay.
I like when people ask me that question because then that really helps to build that talent and that recruitment
Yeah.
connection between the two. So when they say that, I say, okay, well, here's the range. And then if there's some inconsistencies, if there's some what am I thinking of, bonuses or something like
Mhm.
the company likes to give, you're then beginning a conversation. You're then beginning to
Yeah.
stuff. But here's one thing, and I've been doing a lot in the sales scope. Here's one thing I like to ask those guys. I say, look, what do you need on your W-2 to keep the wife happy, the kids Wi-Fi on, and your peace and sanity? And that literally starts the conversation of, Jason, here's what I need as a base.
Mhm.
Okay, because that's a little bit of a different scope, right? So
Yeah.
you just got to think about, what do I need to live off of? What risk am I willing to take? Because if I'm going from a smaller company making a bigger paycheck, but I want to grow my resume,
Right.
if Coca-Cola comes to me and they say, hey, we want to interview you for this, and et cetera, and you go through the pipeline and everything, and then they come with the offering, you say, well, I'm here, but I really want to choose to be here. It goes back into what Tila was saying about the total rewards and the benefits.
Yeah.
I sacrifice in order to make this win.
Right.
So you got to be very strategical and methodical about it. I think Victor said something about that in our pre-conversation. What's the company offering me? Where can I
Right.
go in the long run?
Right. Right. Okay.
Kathy, if you don't mind,
Yeah. Jump in,
I
Jamie.
think what we're going to start to see is a trend, and there's many states where this is already happening. The labor law is one where, as the employer, you are not allowed, or it's against the law to ask and require the candidate to tell you what they're making right now. So they don't have to divulge that. So from a job seeker perspective, if you think you're being underpaid, I mean, the couple of nuggets here that I heard would be from Jason: get the data, get the data, and as you're doing your search, you give them a range. I like a range between like 5 and 10K. If you're
Okay.
have it be pretty narrow. I agree with Tila that it can't be so astronomical, and they're going to go right to the bottom of it anyway. So,
Right.
but to be aware of that, again, if you don't want to be stuck like you're underpaid, know that in Georgia it's not the law. So, but many HR departments are coaching the recruiters and the TA staff, like our at Matrix. I mean, our HR person has been coaching our recruiting team for a while now. Hey, get used to this. Is coming. It's a wave. It's already affecting our San Francisco office and other offices. So we'd like to have you work in this way, not asking what people are making right now. So you could use that, again, from a job seeker's perspective, use that to your advantage. If you think you're being underpaid, then
Yeah. That's a good point. I know from personal experience, someone a long time ago, a mentor of mine, when I was like looking at one of my first job transitions, and I knew I could make more money. And she just said, when they ask you what you're making, all you have to answer is, what I'm looking to make in my next role is X. You don't have to say, I don't want to tell you, because then it feels weird and awkward.
Right, right.
What I'm looking for in this next opportunity is this range. And that little nugget has really saved me, or just helped me have some confidence that, at the end of the day, it's really irrelevant what you're making now, because you're talking to them about a job with them. It's not about your current role or whatever's past. Okay. Any other thoughts about money or negotiation? I love the whole total package and some of that perspective, JV. So let's, the last thing that was on here, and then before we kind of wrap up, I do want each of the panelists we were kind of talking about, I want to give you like a little heads up, maybe 60 seconds at the end after our last topic. Each of you kind of give your top 2 tips for being successful in a job search, and maybe 1 or 2 like, just don't do. We were kind of giggling on gaps that we've all had, right? So in today, what are some things you should avoid, and maybe things that would be great that we can walk away with? But let's talk about, no one really said that their number 1 choice would be because they have a bad manager. But the reality is, people, as I say, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers a lot of times. So any kind of free thought, I think Tila, you and I were kind of talking about this. So that's bound to happen to most people. Tila apparently has had a perfect career and has had a bad manager. Yes, I had to tell her one of my stories, which has still scarred me for life. But anyway, give us your thoughts, Tila, if you're in a
Sure. I to piggyback on what Kathy said, I'll first start by saying that I have not had a bad manager, and I'm grateful for that. I've had many great learning opportunities, some tough managers that held me accountable, but not anybody that was like just a really bad person, or that I felt stressed to go to work every day and work with.
Right.
With that, I talk to people that are in that situation quite a bit and coach them around it. And actually, our company has a sister company where we do coach people in situations like this. And the one thing that, it kind of goes back to that survivalist technique or thought about, you need to adapt or move, right? So make that decision. Am I going to adapt, or am I going to move? And once you hit that plan, you still can't unplug, even though I know a lot of people already sort of mentally unplug from work when they do that. But put together a plan and challenge yourself, make it a challenge for yourself and say, should I put together a 3 to 6 month plan? I don't think it should be 30 days. Performance plans are not 30 days, they're 90 days. So why don't you give yourself a performance plan to help improve potentially your relationship with your boss? Because oftentimes, going back to culture, sometimes the reason that we clash with the boss is not because they're intentionally, trying to bug you or micromanage you. Maybe it's their style, maybe it's the culture they come from, maybe it's the previous company they worked with, the previous department that they were promoted into their role from. Perhaps they have goals in their career that they're just driving hard and fast after, and they're just sort of leaving you in the dust. What I would do, though, is create a 3 to 6 month plan where you say, you know what, I'm going to dig in deep. I'm going to try to build a deeper relationship with this person. And I'm going to do that by trying to get some time on their calendar at least once a week or once every other week, or just sending them a text or an IM just to check in. Hey, is there anything I can help you with this week? I saw you got a big meeting with so-and-so, or I heard you mention in our meeting that you've got a big meeting with such and such. Is there anything I can do to help you prepare for that meeting? And really take a proactive approach to it. It's sometimes hard when you feel like you might be being mistreated or not the favorite, because oftentimes that's what it stems from, is that you're performing and you feel like, why is this happening? But anticipating their needs and being there to support them and reassuring them that you're there to make them look good, which is really your role, frankly. Part of your role is to make your boss look good and to make their job and life easier. In the virtual space, I think it gave us, at the beginning of COVID, it gave us this space where we were okay, like not hearing from your boss. You just did what you needed to do because you were happy to still be working while all of your friends were unfortunately losing, some of their roles. When you do make that commitment, though, go all in. Don't go partially in. Figure out if there's another department that you could move to. If you're looking at the move aspect of this, the adapt is create the plan. The move is, can you move to another department internally? Is there another person that you feel you would get along with well? Is there someone you admire that you can build a relationship with and eventually let them know in that 3 to 6 month period that you'd like to go work on their team if they have an opening, or perhaps an opening's available that excites you and you could make a pivot in terms of the move? Or you decide that you want to launch a job search and get out there and look for a new opportunity. We know what that looks like. Create the target list, create your top 5 from a culture perspective, apply for roles, talk to your network. I often think that people leave their previous coworkers in the dust. Like, they used to work with them and they say, oh, we'll keep in touch. Oh, I love you so much. And then they never talk to them, and years go by and you haven't connected with them, and that's okay. But in this sense, if you make that decision to make the move, then reaching out to some of your previous coworkers to say, hey, totally confidential, but I just want to let you know, I think it's time. If you know of anything, please let me know. And, managing it that way. But more than anything, attitude is everything. And if you are working with a difficult manager, kill them with kindness. Make sure that you don't squelch your professional demeanor and your attitude and how you show up to work every day simply because you don't like working with that manager. This is all within your control. While many of us are not in positions where you could just walk away from work tomorrow and not work at all because you're not, you don't have a trust fund sitting waiting for you to tap into it. And you didn't sell Moe's as a founding partner, of the burrito restaurant.
I may have gotten the winning lottery ticket though.
Oh, I need to check my numbers. But seriously, when you do make that decision, stick firm to it and say, I've got to get out of here. But don't kill yourself every day saying, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Just keep your attitude, upright and firm, and stick with whatever plan you go with. And who knows, things could get better while you're looking for a job, and then you hang up the job search.
Okay. Yolanda or Jason?
Tila definitely gave a lot of good tips there. And, I think attitude does matter. A lot of times you don't know what other people are dealing with. So I think that's the other piece, personally or professionally. So even if you have a boss that's difficult, I think that killing them with kindness and trying to make sure you're focused on your mission and your purpose, I think is important. Because if you get caught up in the emotion, which is hard, not to do, because when you spend so much time with each other, it's possible that you might not be a fit. But I definitely agree that the more you can focus on the mission, the purpose that you're there, helping them to be successful, even if it means that maybe you're not going to get the recognition or something like that if they're that type of manager. But remember that it's going to hopefully pay off in the next opportunity, whatever that might be, whether it's at the company or if you decide to go ahead and launch that job search.
Okay.
I would say first, be humble. I think that's very important. I would say think before you speak. I've had to learn that one myself over and over again, a lot. But I would also say do not be scared to give a little feedback, 180 feedback. People say 360, but that's a full circle. And I think we can all agree a full circle just doesn't work when you're trying to change that. Right? So, you want to give a little 180 feedback in the
Yeah.
responsive way, because your managers don't know, and Kathy said
Mhm.
earlier, they don't know your love language. Okay.
That's right.
They don't know, maybe you like to be told, hey, you're doing a good job,
Yeah.
versus the pat on the back. They don't
Mhm.
really know you. They know you from the interview. They know you and your work ethic and what you can bring to the table and your capabilities, but they don't know how to necessarily cater to you, and vice versa. You don't know how to cater to them. So
Mhm.
have to start becoming a partnership with your manager. It has to be a partnership, right?
Right.
And then if it's unbearable, and I believe Yolanda brought this up before, when you do try to transfer to another department, it's going to be tough if it's internal, because
Mm.
managers talk. So you have to be very,
Yeah.
soft about how you deal with it. But
Mhm.
this is the perfect time to learn to partner. This is the perfect time to sit back and observe. If my manager wants me to do something, and this is one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, to stay in my lane. A lot of people
Right.
do that. As I've been called a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So at a certain point in time, because I was literally wearing myself down,
Yeah.
trying to argue with my manager, trying to argue with, like, the company's going to change its way for Jason Hayes. Not,
Yeah.
so you have to learn to just really humble yourself, make your list. That five list that talked about, as far as, what you're looking for in a culture. You could do the same thing with your manager.
Yeah.
What am I looking for in my manager? What am I looking
Right.
for in my career? You don't just have to stop at, a list with one category. You can make it several categories and be successful and stay on the path.
Mhm. One of the things I wanted to add too, if the company will allow it, through my own career journey, um, I've asked to speak to other people on the team when I've been in an interview situation.
Mhm.
And that gives me a feel for the management style, because I've certainly, I've been around the block a few times. So I kind of know what works for me and where I thrive and where I don't thrive. And so that has been really helpful, just to have a casual conversation with somebody else who works for that manager, to say, kind of tell us how the week goes. How often do you touch base with them? And, some people like to have a lot of touch points. I've had employees, I pretty much kind of run with it. Employees that really do like the weekly touch in and to set the goals. And I'm like, okay. So I may not even be a good manager, because I pretty much am like, here's what the objective is. You just come back and let me know what, if you need any help. And depending on where the people are in their career. So I think I'm a nice person, but I may not have been a very good manager for that type of individual. So if you're in the interview process and I personally would just say, hey, is there anybody else on your team? I'd love to learn more about how you guys operate. And I feel like that could be a good way to just get a feel for that type of what kind of manager they are, their style. So, all right, we're going to do the 60 seconds around some little, do's and don'ts. And then I think we have a few minutes, Shanika, where we can open it up for if any. I see some chats. I want to make certain that we can answer any questions that people have. But last little nuggets. Yolanda, I'm going to start with you.
I think from a couple of nuggets, your network is your net worth. I know it sounds cliche, but we talked about it from the beginning, that it's important to think about those that previous employers and coworkers. Being in an organization like this, that's always a good opportunity. I tell people, Tila's example of being at the barbecue, I say the church picnic, the family reunion, you never know where you might meet someone that could help you in your career. The other thing I think about is having an understanding of what you value, because we talked about that as well. I think as far as you're mentioning, expanding it beyond just the company, I think is important, but really doing your research to understand that, I think is important as well, because a lot of times we'll say it, but then we don't do the due diligence to understand what it is that we are looking for. So if it's conversations, if it's Glassdoor, Indeed, looking at all the available research is so much more available than it used to be. So that's where that network also comes in handy.
Perfect. Anything else?
Well, you said, did you want me to say things not to do?
Well, if you just got a gotcha, just, just for people to think about, but we don't have to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll pass. Let me come back on that one.
That's fine. That's fine. Sometimes people are better at learning, like, I should definitely steer away from that, but
Yeah.
it's up to you guys, whatever. Tila
Yep.
or Jason?
I'm happy to jump in. And, one thing that I talk about is just the fundamentals. Be good at the fundamentals when you're looking for a job, reaching out to people, being professional, approaching them and asking them, whatever it is that you have the question about. I saw this job in your company, would you mind representing me for the role? And, sharing my resume, but then also, thanking that person when they've done that. So it's sort of going back to the foundation of what your mom, hopefully, or your dad or someone in your family taught you as you were growing up.
Right.
One thing that my mom taught me and still reinforces in me is just writing that thank you note and telling someone, thank you. I appreciate what you did for me. And people want to help you, but you have to help them help you. And sometimes that means that they're a really busy person and you might feel like, I've reached out to them, I've asked them 3 times and they haven't gotten back to me. Well, keep trying.
Right.
Tell them how important it is to you that you find a job to be able to provide for your family. And I think when you do that, they'll respond. The other thing in terms of foundation is just being on time. Being prepared for interviews. When you do have those conversations with people, be prepared. Don't ramble. And please don't ramble on voicemails. That's probably my biggest pet peeve is just people that use the voicemail as a conversation tool. The other thing is, so being prompt, I always have my 5 Ps. If y'all haven't noticed yet, I stick with 5 on everything. But five Ps as you're preparing for interview, and that's promptness, preparation, practice, polish, and passion. Always exude passion. Always be positive about whatever you're coming from and going to. Please, I know this is fundamental, but sometimes people get really comfortable and they start talking ill about their current manager or company. You really want to refrain from doing that. And that goes back to being, polished in that interview. Being on time is critical. Being able to work the Zoom. Y'all are all here today, so we know you can work the Zoom, but showing up for that Zoom a little bit earlier than normal. In terms of my story, I'll sort of flip what Kathy was mentioning on its head and not talk about a bad story, but a good one. I take great pride in having the opportunity to place some of my closest friends in very senior level roles around this city. And I love them to bits. And one in particular was working in Tampa, and I just knew she needed to be in Atlanta to be closer to her daughter. And a great opportunity came up with one of our clients who happens to be Delta. And I was helping her prep for the interview. And I called her the day before and I was like, are you ready? And she's like, yep, I'm ready. I've read up on everybody, all of the traditional things. And my question is always this: what can you do that someone else is not going to do so that you stand out when you go in and interview with them?
Okay.
Now, if you're working with a great company like Matrix, those recruiters can help you get ideas on what you can do to prepare, what can make you stand out. In this case, because she was truly a friend of mine, I was pretty tough with her. And I said, what do you have prepared to bring on that Delta plane with you when you come interview at Delta? And she said, I'm bringing my resume and I'll take notes. And I said, no, first of all, the interview starts from the time you hit the airport, because it's Delta Airlines that you're interviewing with, and you are flying their air carrier to Atlanta to interview. I also just told her that if she happened to have an iPad or something that she could share her experience on. A lot of people are bringing in like paper copies of what they've done in their career. But if you can have it prepared and queued up on an iPad and you can show it to that leader, it stands out a little bit in terms of how you can communicate and share your message and share your work. And share your passion and what you're passionate about. So I would just say, always try to think, what could I do to prepare for this interview or to bring with me or to show over Zoom? Because just because we're interviewing over Zoom now doesn't mean that we don't need to fully prepare and we can't show examples of our work. You can. You can show it through an iPad. You can show it through a screen share if they don't have that blocked with the technology, and just have a backup ready. But be prepared to stand out. Be prepared to look different. Be prepared for that person to walk away from every interaction with you, every manager that you interview with or leader that you interview with. Hopefully they walk away from that experience thinking, wow, you left them with 3 letters in their mouth, WOW. How can you do that? So just keep that in mind.
That's awesome. That's fabulous. Fabulous. Jason?
So just to piggyback off of what Tila was saying about being prepared and showing who you are, use your LinkedIn. That is a phone book of readiness. I believe during COVID, we were still looking for individuals. And there was a young lady who actually got laid off from Delta, ironically, marketing department. And just reading the story that she put there, I reached out to her and I said, hey, we have some marketing positions open here. People do pay attention to LinkedIn. Our CEO told me before he met me because he paid attention to my LinkedIn. And that's a place where you can truly be unique and you can truly be you. And you can spark up all types of conversations. So sometimes the recruiters will find you off of that. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, which leads to the next thing. If you don't know how to, we'll say, present yourself, get somebody that does, which goes back to what Tila was saying once again about Matrix, right? Hey, if you don't know how to do this, come to us and we'll help you do it. You have to create a brand for yourself because you are unique, right? So don't be scared to turn away from that uniqueness. And then third, I know my friends in IT always get the, they're introverted and, they don't talk and they don't have personalities. And I say that's a lie because I've been to Dragon Con. Okay, so it's tons of personalities walking around. And when I say uniqueness, I was sitting up here and I was thinking about this. This is my phone case. Okay, it looks like a Game Boy and actually works because I'm special on some levels. And so people actually start conversations. They're like, wow, is that your phone case? It's pretty cool. And I said, yeah. And then they're like, oh my God, it actually works. And I'm like, yeah, I got to have something to do with meetings sometimes. And they just start laughing. And then we have conversation. And once you just actually have a conversation, you never know who you're surrounded by, because I've literally hired people. When I worked for Bank of America, I hired people right out of their positions to go work for Bank of America because they said, we're looking for a certain type of talent. And okay. And so while I was out in the field, just doing my everyday chores, having natural conversations, guess what? People are like, wow, I have a career now. I'm hired. I don't see myself working at Chipotle or, I don't see myself working in Zara anymore. I moved from the cash register onto something bigger.
Right.
Always be aware of who you're surrounded by or who you could possibly be surrounded by, because just because I might be in jeans and a t-shirt and not a button down in a suit doesn't mean that I'm not a human first and a resource second.
Yeah. Great. I know I'm reading that. I was hired by the Hyatt after a conversation. Wow. Okay.
There you go.
I know. That's impressive.
It's a story.
Impressive. Wow. Well, those are amazing final thoughts. Really, really meaty, good, really good takeaways. I would like to, I see Victor on there. Shanika, can we open it up and see if people, I know people are chatting, but do people get off their microphones? And if anybody wants to actually ask a question, I did have somebody I wanted to answer. I think Harvey, you wanted to get some compensation, supply and demand for a couple of roles. So hopefully you can send me an email and I can send you that information. I don't have it readily available. You had asked for a couple of those slides, but if you could, Kathy.VanPelt@MatrixRez. Any other questions that we not answer, Shanika? Are there questions on there?
So there was one comment that John responded to. Let's see. So I think Greg reached out and was asking about mainframe positions, and I was kind of thinking it would be interesting also to hear a spin from the panel on their thoughts on kind of like going for a job search. Maybe you're starting from zero, you're interested in position, but maybe it's been a bit of time and you're not sure what maybe has changed. So you're trying to explore what's out there, how to kind of get started. Maybe just how to kind of get started and get that going again.
I'm happy to start this, and if anyone wants to chime in with me, that'd be great. But okay. Greg, happy to help. I think what you might find now in the mainframe area is going to be a smaller pool of options for you than it was 15 years ago. But there are some still out there. I would say be open to either a contract position, because we do see these as contract positions from some of our clients when they do come up, more so that than a perm position. But again, there are some that are perm positions. I would, and we're happy to help you with this too. I would look to see what the data tells you on the comp, and then maybe solidify your decision. Hey, I definitely want to do that, just to make sure that it might be pretty different than what you're doing right now. I think I'd have to go back to the chat. I think you said you might be doing some metadata work, but
right. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
So my need is pretty specific and probably not germane to the broader audience, but I'll talk a little bit about it. Basically, I've been in IT for 30 plus years. In the early stages, I was more of a COBOL mainframe guy. That was the dominant thing. And on the business side, that's what I did. But I segued over into data modeling and then metadata and data governance and that sort of thing. Then I went into retirement. I had some life-changing events go on, death of some people that caused me to move back from New York City to Atlanta. And in retirement, and now I need to come back out of retirement, and rather than go back into the metadata space, I thought I'd like to go back to something that I really enjoyed doing back in the day, which was, mainframe development. Yeah. I do understand that that a lot of companies moving away from that, but I also understand that, especially during COVID, there was a big need for those guys because many of the state systems that might have issued checks, et cetera, were written in COBOL, and they needed people to maintain those systems. So that's where I'm coming from. And I just want to find a good mechanism, a good way to get back into the industry, even though my current resume, which goes back 10 years, does not go back to the time when I did mainframe. So that's kind of the dilemma that I'm facing.
Okay. If I could, Greg, thank you for sharing the background, because it made me kind of think of my father, who he was a network administrator. He was there for Ceridian for 10 years, and then he went to Siemens. And so helping my own father, it was an interesting thing, because first of all, what I wanted him to acknowledge was, times have changed and things have changed. Acknowledge that up front, and that's great. So then the second thing I always tell people is look at your transferable skills, right? I think transferable skills are going to tell more of the story versus the title that you're looking for, right? And then the last thing is, and you sound like you've kept up to date with what's going on, even in your retirement, your early retirement, you're coming out of it. But it seems like you've kept up to date with what things are going on now. Remember, I started as a computer animator, and I'm in HR and also finance, right? So when you think about that, when I look at the way things are done now from a computer animation standpoint, you can do a lot of stuff with your cell phone.
Right.
You know,
Right.
had when I was in college, we had to sign up for time, right?
Yes.
That means you know how to go in and do it in 30 minutes, which could take somebody days to do, right? And I see there, and it said, you're not paying me for what I can do in 30 minutes. You're paying me for the 30 years that it took me to learn this, right? I think that's awesome.
Right.
And no offense to anybody on the line, but so you have a lot of stuff to work with. What I always advise, strip away that title and just look at the details.
Yes.
And you'll find that seat that you're looking for.
So, and again, I don't want to, I feel a little embarrassed because my thing is a little specific, but to your point about changing with the times. So, I'm a little bit versed in DevOps and AWS and Azure, and those things, but they're educational things that I've done. They're not reflected in my resume per se, right? So to the extent that I complete some of those certifications, then I can begin to move those things over to my resume, even though my background is not specific to that. So I wanted to speak to some of you guys who are on the hiring side or on the marketing skill set side to figure, just to strategize about how I might package myself along those lines. But I am absolutely not resistant to change. Change is inevitable, and so that's fine. The reason I'm focused on COBOL and mainframe is it's kind of, I think, from now until maybe another 5 years into the future, this is kind of the last gasp of that. And I'm one of those old heads who still do that work, who still is capable of doing that work. And so that was the first bus that I was going to jump on, but I knew that I couldn't ride that out, much more than half a decade, maybe, right? So that's where I'm coming from. And so anybody who wants to speak to me, I can leave my telephone number. I'll share it with everybody, and or whatever other contact information you guys might provide, because I'd be curious to talk to you about it.
And the last note that I want to drop in there, and this goes to everybody within the group. I was also a CAD drafter at one point in time in my life. I know, once again, crazy resume. But there are 3 programs out there that's used in engineering right now. One is SolidWorks, one is AutoCAD, and the other one is MicroStation. They pretty much all do the same thing. So, I hear you say COBOL. What other and this is how you do a keyword search. You find those adjacent programs that do the same thing, and you plug all those into the keyword search, and you will see a whole bunch of other opportunities pop up, because people aren't really tied to the name of companies are tied to the name of the program, not the functionality sometimes. So if you attack the functionality based on the name, then you could probably, finagle some more leads out of there as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I think, Shanika, if I'm not mistaken, that we're at the top of the hour. It's supposed to be from 6:30 to 8. Is that right? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you to the 3 panelists. I was just going to thank the panelists and then turn it back over to you. And JV, I didn't actually ask him ahead of time to chime in, but he's always game. So thank you, JV, for your contribution to as our 4th panelist that was not official. But I'll turn it back over to you, Shanika. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was having problems hitting the unmute button. But yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kathy, Jason, Tiva, and Yolanda for joining us, and JV, of course, for joining us this evening. I think it was a pretty good panel. Good questions coming out. So again, to everyone, feel free to connect with everyone you see here on LinkedIn. It's a way to grow your network. I know there's a couple questions around just how to kind of grow your network. So one last thing before we drop off, I want to drop just BDPA links to our like social media and everything. So we'll have upcoming sessions in the rest of the year. Oh yeah, I don't remember if the cover said this, but yeah, Happy New Year again to everyone. But yeah, I'll hang out for a little bit if someone wanted to ask me a couple more questions. But thanks everyone for joining and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.